All right, what is up, guys? And we are back with a big old boy. This is the HMM Red Horn, which I have had in my backlog for a year, actually. I got this guy closer to the tail end of 2020. I think I had him in my backlog starting in like January of 2021. So this one I actually rushed to build a little bit sooner than some of the ones that have been in my backlog for longer, and mainly because I just didn't feel like building yet another Blade Liger or building like the Genosaur or Genobreaker or, God forbid, the Iron Kong Yeti. So I wanted a kit that was still on the larger size box type of HMMs, but it was a different model underneath and not just another Liger that I'd already built. So I moved him up and worked on him immediately after finishing the DCS-J. And overall, the build process with this was pretty smooth. I have to say that out of a lot of the larger size HMMs I built, this one was probably the easiest. And that doesn't mean that it's any less complex than like the Blade Liger or the DCS-J or the Great Saber or any of the other large size HMMs that I built. But this one just, it looks like they had taken a lot of the previous design issues with the older HMMs and taken them into consideration when designing this. And we'll talk about the finite details of the kit itself as we get later into this, but I want to stop for a moment and talk about the lore as well, because the Red Horn is one of my favorite Zoids nowadays. I didn't initially care for it like back in the days when the anime was airing and when I was a kid. Famously, I got the motorized Red Horn, which we'll do a side-by-side comparison with, was one of my very first Zoids that I got for Christmas of 2002. But I was a little bit disappointed when I first got it because I really wanted the Blade Liger, but of course the Blade Liger was hard to find. But in hindsight, I really grew to love the Red Horn because I had the model kit of it, and it was the first motorized kit that I ever had. I only had like two other Zoids prior to that were both wind up. So to see the motorized function in action on that Red Horn is a very fond memory of mine that I will always cherish, and I still have that original Red Horn. So then later going back and, rediscovering Zoids and getting into HMMs and whatnot, this guy does have a sort of sentimental value there. So I was pretty excited to build this one. In terms of lore, this one's going to be a mouthful because this one, it has not only been in lore since the very beginning, but also has the lore in the OER comics. So I've already done a Red Horn review. As you guys know, I did the review on the motorized version, and that was a long time ago, so I probably know a little bit more about the lore now and can speak a little bit more accurately on it. So it gives me a good opportunity to kind of go back and set the record straight on some of the mistakes or things that I misspoke on or just said incorrectly. But one of the examples of which is I may have referred to it as a rhinoceros type Zoid in that video. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look. But it's clearly a dinosaur, and even Michelle, when she saw the original one, was like, "Oh yeah, he's some kind of dinosaur." And I'm like, "Is he?" And then I looked. I'm like, "Of course he is, stupid." Exactly what type of dinosaur he is, I don't exactly remember. But in the original battle story lore, the Red Horn was the sort of heavy artillery muscle of the Xenobus Empire from the very beginning. So we saw them as early as ZAC 2029, and they were incredibly powerful. There was nothing on the Republic side that could withstand them, except for maybe the Gojulus. And even then, two or three of these at a time, especially at long range, could easily take out a Gojulus as well. The reason being is just the unrivaled firepower on these things, and plus the fact that in spite of their size and their very short legs and how low to the ground they are, they're actually pretty nimble and can get up to some pretty decent speeds. And then if you get into close range with this thing, well, needless to say, you're going to have a bad time. The dense armor it has around its face, and of course the horn, the tail, it's just all around has a lot going for it in terms of fighting capabilities. So this thing is in the medium to large size Zoids for the Xenobus Empire, up there with, the Iron Kong and that kind of thing, and was very, very, very influential in the early days of the war, and was still useful up until the fall of the Xenobus Empire in 2049. The Gylos Empire then came into effect and started making the Dark Horn, taking the technology and the blueprints of the Red Horn and, you know, making it more advanced. But apparently there was some kind of meteorite impact or whatever that destroyed a bunch of Gylo's technology and prevented them from being able to manufacture more Dark Horns. So they had to actually go back and start reverse engineering them into a new iteration of the Red Horn yet again. So they made new Red Horns by reverse engineering what specimens they had left still surviving after the meteorite impact, which is kind of interesting to think about. It's almost like there's three different eras, three different iterations of the Red Horn over the course of the battle story, if you count the Dark Horn as one of those variants. So you had the original, the Dark Horn, and then the new Red Horns that were reverse engineered based off of that technology. So in terms of the OER comics, it's also worth mentioning there were some Red Horns that were captured by the Helix Republic and put into the Helix Republic ranks, and those are what is referred to as the Green Horns, and they were actually outfitted with attack boosters, which does make a lot of sense considering you have the Helix Republic arsenal at your disposal at that point. In terms of the OER comics, Red Horn was actually a very influential character. He was the leader of the mutant Red Zoids known as Red Horn the Terrible. And something I didn't know, I actually own all the comics now, is apparently he managed to draft Mammoth to join the mutant Red Zoids, and that's why in OER there is a Mammoth that is blue and a Mammoth that is red before his changeover and after. And some people have kind of made the comparison that Red Horn the Terrible and Mammoth have sort of a Megatron Starscream-esque relationship, which ends up being pretty true in the comics, where Mammoth is always kind of trying to double cross him and actually sets a trap for him that he falls into, and Red Horn was defeated there, but his android pilot managed to survive. And later he was able to be rebuilt and came back even stronger, where he managed to get his revenge not only on Mammoth but also on Zoidzilla, the leader of the Blue Zoids. So that was actually pretty cool. Hopefully you guys can see this on screen. There is actually one of the comics right there featuring Red Horn. And one thing that's interesting here is how they depict his actual horns. Maybe that was for this iteration of Red Horn in the story, but the horns on the model kit do flip forward, but they don't look like, you know, angular pointed devil horns like that. So that's kind of interesting that they went for that there. In terms of the anime, so in Chaotic Century, we first see the Red Horn piloted by Rosso, and is one of the first major adversaries that Van has to overcome with the Shield Liger. After that, we see the Red Horn within the ranks of the Gylos Empire pretty often, but is largely made obsolete by the Dark Horn, and we don't see it very much after that point, to the extent to which when I built the Red Horn model kit as a kid, I almost didn't remember it even appearing in the anime, and I thought it was only just the Dark Horn, which was kind of silly because the Dark Horn just has so many more media appearances than that of the Red Horn, even though the Red Horn is the original. After that point, though, after basically the time skip where you get into the Guardian Force saga, the Red Horn stops being formidable and starts becoming cannon fodder, unfortunately, where you get like main character syndrome, where basically any Zoid that is not piloted by one of the main characters is defeated effortlessly in battle, doing a pretty big disservice to this thing in terms of its power and lore. But that's par for the course as far as the anime goes. Same thing with New Century Zero. So in New Century Zero, of course, Harry Champ has a Dark Horn that's fully decked out with Gatling units and a bunch of crazy stuff. And there's also a brief scene where Jack Sisko is helping out a team that uses Red Horns, but other than that, they have next to no screen time in New Century Zero. And that's about it for the anime. In terms of the video games, in the Zoids Versus trilogy, I actually, when I did the tier list for Battle Legends, rated the Red Horn pretty high. and that's because of the sheer firepower on it. So both of these weapons up here do an insane amount of damage, but also they have relatively limited ammo pools is the problem. So the fact that you have a Zoid with multiple weapon slots for powerful weapons means if you run out of ammo for this one, you can just switch to that one and vice versa. So these weapons are better suited on the Red Horn, where you can equip multiple of them at a time, than they are on other equivalent Zoid platforms, where if that's your only primary weapon, you're going to run out of ammo and be in a tight situation. And like I said, a stock default Red Horn without a bunch of Gatling units and crap on it is actually pretty fast and nimble. So you actually have some decent maneuverability with this guy in spite of its size and clunkiness, or perceived clunkiness. Of course, when you get into like the Dark Horn and you get all the Gatling units and stuff on it, it can slow down to a bit of a slog. And these things don't put up much of a fight when you're fighting against them, but they can be pretty useful when you actually have them on your side in the video game. So that's mostly it for the lore, and hopefully I got all of that correct this time around. I really want to do a side-by-side comparison here of the model kits, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the fine details of the HMM. I really wanted to show off the elephant in the room as far as the HMM goes. So I'm actually going to do a three-way comparison here, not just with the original Hasbro motorized Red Horn, but also with the action figure Red Horn. And so this lets us kind of talk about some noticeable comparisons here. So first, let's kind of talk about the release order of the Red Horn. So again, the Red Horn was first introduced in the original OJR line in 1983. The only major differences between that run and the modern Hasbro 2002 one that I have right here is the color of the translucent plastic. So the translucent plastic here on the Hasbro one is green, whereas it's orange on the OJR one. There was also the United States RoboStrux one, which was sort of a green and blue color, which looks pretty cool. You have the European Red Horn the Terrible, which again is mostly identical to this one, but with the difference in the translucent plastic as well. One of the interesting things from the gentleman in the UK that sold me my Zoidzilla that he talks about with a lot of people that own Red Horn the Terrible over there in the UK is that the joint back here where the tail connects is infamous for breaking and snapping off. I definitely did not have that problem with my Hasbro Red Horn or my Dark Horn either. But one of the things I will complain about is that the tail is angled down way too far, and it does scrape the ground even when the motor is going. And the fact that the tail cockpit thing has this protruding blade that comes down to the bottom kind of amplifies that problem. And then, of course, when we get to the NJR era, we have the NJR Red Horn, Dark Horn, Green Horn. There's also a clear translucent motorized Red Horn and a bone color white Red Horn made for the museum project, similar to the Gun Sniper and the Genosaur that were made for that same project as well. This right here is the Hasbro action figure Red Horn, which I don't know if I've shown off any action figures in any of these videos so far. My brother has the action figure Liger Zero and the motorized Liger Zero, so I wanted to do this, action figure motorized HMM comparison with the Liger Zero as well, but I just haven't got that opportunity. But a good friend of mine, Caleb over at Flashing Blades Productions, did mail me a bunch of his action figure Zoids, and so just purely to do the reviews with, so I do want to kind of talk about these. They're obviously very small and very silly. It's molded pretty faithfully to the motorized version, and it doesn't have much in the way of articulation. Like the legs move at the shoulder, but they don't move at the knees or the feet or anything like that. And then they always have a little gimmick where you push down the tail, and I guess he has like a horn attack or something like that right there. And then he's got this big ridiculous Gatling unit up here with a spring-loaded missile, which of course is missing from there. But yeah, cool little dude. Not too much to these guys, but these were definitely more accessible, by the Hasbro audience for kids that liked the show, that didn't want to build a model kit, or parents that were concerned that their kids were going to break the model kit. So these, I guess, serve their purpose, even though I don't think they have a whole lot of value for collectors nowadays. but I do intend to show off quite a few more of these as we go down the line. So one of the things I wanted to point out about the HMM Red Horn right off the bat is just how big it is. Like, this thing is huge, and it's slightly taller than the motorized version, but it is much, much longer. So the fact that the tail has that articulation and is able to kind of arc itself more upward and stick straight out just makes it much, much longer. The size of the weapons are tremendously larger, and just overall, everything they've done with the proportions on the HMM version, I think, is spectacular. Now, when I first ordered it and I saw the box art here, I was very excited that the Red Horn is going to be molded in a different color of red plastic than the motorized version. And then when I opened the box and started building this guy, I thought, well, it actually is a little bit darker red than I thought it was going to be. It looks a lot closer to the old version. I'm not terribly excited about that. But then when you actually put the two of them side by side like this, you actually see that they are quite a bit different. So the original Red Horn, the motorized one, has this more maroon color, and the HMM version has this more rustic red color, which I think when you put them side by side like that and you see the difference, I really do prefer the color of the HMM one quite a bit there. But more so than just the red being different, the amount of contrasting colors on the HMM version is really incredible. So you basically only have two colors on the motorized version, which is that maroon and then black, aside from a couple of silver pieces that make up the weapons. But here you have all different types of gray and black that contrast within the same piece. So for instance, right here, this little side piece right here, that's one piece molded in red plastic on the motorized version. And then here on the HMM, not only is it made up of several pieces, but it has contrasting black accent pieces on the inside of it. And it has articulation. It actually moves down right here to reveal, missiles or something like that. And on that note, the HMM version is absolutely decked out to the gills with guns. It is ridiculous. So it's not really 100% sure if the horns right here flip forward and become guns on the Red Horn in lore. There's some original OJR battle story artwork that depicts this, as well as what you saw here on the OER comic, and then these pieces on the HMM version do look a lot more like guns than they do in the original version, but I like to think that they aren't. I mean, we never see that happen in the anime, and we're never able to do that in any of the games, but aside from that, even if they're not guns, we have just the HMM tradition that I love so much of taking all the weapons on the original Zoid and making them bigger, more detailed, and just look a lot more powerful. So the underbarrel shock cannon over here, again, a lot bigger. The weapons on this guy uses a lot of interchanging parts and a lot of Empire Zoids, including the Saber Tiger. So this piece up here is exactly the same on both the motorized and HMM Saber Tiger. Same thing with the radar there. And one of the things I pointed out about my motorized Red Horn, but I'll go ahead and mention again here, is that the connecting piece right here, meant for this gun on the side, it's actually not supposed to go on the side. It's supposed to go right here and be connected by a little piece there, but I lost that piece as a kid. So really what's supposed to happen is, the radar is supposed to go right here, just like on the HMM version. This cannon is supposed to go right here, just on the HMM version. And this is correct. And then these guns right here are supposed to go in the back of the tail. So, but being that I was a dumb kid and this thing has been sort of heavily worn down over time by use and abuse, that's what we're going to get. As far as this cannon right here goes, I was a little bit worried I was going to run out of room for it as I was building, because these little fins right here that may or may not be guns, as we said, are very large and take up a lot of room on this guy. But the gun fits in there with just the right amount of space, comes up over the Red Horn's head, and still kind of points forward, which is something you couldn't really do with the motorized version, because the motorized version, again, that pin in there allowed the gun to swivel back and forth along with the motorized function, which I guess is cool, especially for a model kit that was designed in 1983. And then right here, there's a little part on the side here that makes this gun asymmetrical. Of course, it's broken off on my original motorized version, but what they've done right here is made the two gun barrels completely asymmetrical, and this one had a little cutout to where I had to sort of connect the two clamshell pieces together, and that gives us a little antenna on the side there. So tons of detail packed into just this gun alone. The 3D radar is rendered pretty well in this version. And actually what they've done here is the sort of radar operator. This Zoid has multiple pilots, by the way. It has exactly 3 pilots, which all of them should still be intact on both versions. I've got my blue pilot here, and then the one on the tail. The sort of radar navigator up there, they've actually taken this little cockpit piece and replicated it again on the tail. It's actually an identical clone of the same piece, and that kind of solves one of my big complaints with the motorized Red Horn, which was that the tail is completely exposed. The pilot just sits there. There's no translucent plastic or anything to cover him, which means that he goes missing very easily, and then from a lore standpoint, it just makes no sense because he would be susceptible to enemy fire and stuff like that. It's just very silly. It keeps getting better, though, because, well, I guess I should talk about the cockpit first of all as well, because the cockpit fits nice and flush here on the motorized version, and even the action figure version has the exact same concept when it comes to how the cockpit opens. Of course, there's no pilot in there, but it opens with a hinge at the exact same point. And what they've done here is they sort of have disguised the hinge and made it look less obvious, but what they've done is the hinge is on the underside of this arm that opens up right here. And what is revealed on the inside is the little cockpit thing that most Empire Zoids are known for. You can kind of see it in there. So the exact same type of cockpit that the Hellcat and the Mulga and the Iguan has, that signature Empire cockpit is on the inside of the canopy there, which I think is a nice touch from a lore standpoint. But the pilot doesn't fit in there very well. And so what happens is the actual cockpit canopy thing doesn't close very well because the pilot is pushing the interior cockpit thing open just a little bit, and so the cover can't close all the way. So that's one thing I don't particularly care for on the HMM version. I wouldn't have been upset if you just opened it and you just had a cockpit right there with the pilot like they do on the original. But I appreciate what they tried to go for there. The face overall in the HMM version is decidedly a little bit more blocky. So the horn itself and just the face structure right here is a little bit more smoothed and to a point on the motorized version. And it's very blocky. The little nose right here is very squared off. And I actually don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think it makes it look very fearsome, very heavily armored. And this dude just looks mean and ugly and ready to go. Further complementing that is the teeth, which, again, you have a lower jaw that opens and closes. The teeth are actually molded in and in a different color, which is not present on the original. The teeth are just the same molded maroon color as the rest of the lower jaw. And then we also have, I'm so glad this is a mirror because you can see the little toes under his big padded feet right there. Inside the foot contraption as well are that same molded cream colored plastic there that really kind of sticks out and looks really nice. This big gun up here, same thing. It is just massive. It's been heavily reimagined from the original where it was much, much smaller. And in fact, let me just do this really quick so you guys can kind of see the sheer difference as a piece falls off there. So yeah, you can see just the extent to which the HMM version is so much bigger in that regard. And the part of the construction that I really did like was how the torso came together very seamlessly. Each section of the torso, and like most quadrupedal HMMs, like the Saber Tiger and the Shield Liger and all that, the torso comes together in 3 separate segments, but it was just very smooth and very hassle-free as it came together. There are 2 rubber hoses that run the length of the body and come down towards the end and are supposed to connect at a piece at the end, but that wasn't really working for me very well. And one of the hoses came unplugged from where it connects in the first section of the body when I already had like the 3rd section of the body ready to attach. So I just didn't even bother to fix that. They're in there, but they're sitting loose in there because it's a detail that you would never really see even if you looked for it. So didn't really bother to complete that very much. I thought that was a very silly inclusion to have those on there. In regarding the weapons as well, I love these little guns on the side here. Like they didn't even have to go this all out with the little guns on the sides and the little missile pods right here. Something that's not even really present on the motorized version. Like you have a little indentation right there, but I would never assume that that was supposed to be a weapon. I would never assume that these were supposed to be weapons. And then back here, these guns that do exist on the original version are given their own arm that protrudes outward from the back of the HMM version. So these can actually articulate up and down. And of course, the pin that actually connects in and can allow it to swing side to side as well. Watch me pop something off here. Yeah, so we get some side to side rotation there as well. So I just think that they went all out on really remastering the look of this thing, and you get some more contrasting colors there, where this little hose piece right here, again, it's molded in the same color of plastic as the rest of the tail on the motorized version, and now it's a nice contrasting black right there, and you get gray right here. So you get 3 different colors right there in that one space right there. So yeah, absolutely loved it. The only part about the build for the HMM version that I didn't like was the feet, because the front part of the foot there where the toes articulate is 2 little holes on either side, and then the 2 parts of the feet on that make up the back of the foot where it connects to the ankle connect on the side like that. So you have the front part of the foot and the back part of the foot, and they connect like that. The problem is the 2 little pinholes on the front part of the foot, when you're pushing in on them, they like to pop out. So it's very difficult to kind of wiggle those joints into place and have the foot actually stay together. Luckily, it wasn't too bad, and all 4 feet are fully intact and together, and everything is nice and good to go. So other than that, the construction on this guy was great. I couldn't be happier with it. If you guys are interested in getting one of these, this printing came out, I want to say in 2020, so they should be still fairly common. There is another Dark Horn reissue around the corner, and then Kotobukiya just announced a HMM Greenhorn that's in the works, which I imagine is going to be available for pre-order very soon, because it's not a brand new mold, it's just a retooling of an existing kit where they have just taken this and repainted it green and included the attack boosters from the Blade Liger. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.